relatively quick. I'm Richard Johnson. Let's just enjoy that name for 2 seconds and then move on. I'm from PhD. So, I thought I'd start with a nice, easy slide to really kind of illustrate what exactly I do. So I'm a digital strategist. I looked for all sorts of images around strategy, and then found this one. So I don't do this. I don't draw little people. I don't go to, I think, war. I don't do that. But I'm a performance digital strategist. So there are some digital strategists who primarily work on brand clients. I work on DR clients. So every client has a specific metric that they're trying to drive. So generally sales. So I work in quite a specialised unit that deals with that. And this is the story of me. So in terms of what I actually do, just very, very briefly before we get into how I got to do it, we basically look at channels. So it's the digital strategist role, so it's digital channels primarily, but we also look at offline as well. But ultimately the stuff that we can track very, very simply through you guys using your laptops and computers. And we look at how it performs and how it drives through to the client and how they interact with each other, and ultimately look to try and make money for pretty much all of them. So we have a whole raft of different clients. The big one that I work on is a financial services client, but because I've got a soul, we also work on some charity clients as well, which is quite nice. So that can be money for life insurance, or it can be saving kids in Africa. How did I get into it? So I'm one of the lovely Poms that you've heard about. I've probably got a sunburn from just walking over the bridge. I started my career, well actually before I started my career, thank God it doesn't actually visibly say what it should say there. It does actually say, and got lucky, but I don't mean that I stepped my way up to where I am. So I actually did a history degree, which obviously is very, very relevant to a digital strategy role. And after I finished my degree, I worked at a graduate management course renting cars, which is as glamorous as it sounds. And by chance, I ended up renting a car to the operations director of an agency. And she did something that sounded quite interesting. And there was no element of washing cars involved, so it was something that I was quite keen to get involved in. And basically got into it through the back door. I did look for images based on backdoor, so don't anyone do that on a work computer. So I started at the Searchworks way back when, which is a very, very, very specialised agency. All they did was paid search, which might sound relatively dull to some people, but when you started in car rental, it's just amazing. So I started in a place called Telford, which is the armpit of the UK, before finally moving down to London. So it had 2 offices. It had one in the Midlands, one in London, and all the fun stuff happened in London. Nothing really happened in Telford. So one of the things that I did try and do there was convince them to let me move down to London, but the account management team didn't really work in London. It was the client service team who worked in London. So I got to a point of asking for 8 months. They didn't let me. So I interviewed and got a job in London, and then they let me. So there's one tip: force them to say yes. And I managed a team, and after a year and a half of buying keywords, I got a little bit bored. So I decided to work part-time at Searchworks. So you really can't see that at all, can you? So I worked part-time at Searchworks in order to fulfill my dream of doing a master's degree in undersea archaeology. Again, absolutely vital. Search of a different nature, that's how I sold it in. Yeah, so it was fantastic, I loved it. I was at uni in London, nowhere near the sea. Still can't dive actually, so that's pathetic. And I worked part-time, so the agency that I was at were really, really positive and really quite...
Sorry, I was just trying to get some pictures up.
I just thought you were trying to get close. There we go, so you can see there is a ship that's sunk. I can't dive, so I wouldn't be able to enjoy any part of that. So I worked part-time. It was fantastic. The agency was very, very accommodating. I kind of structured it in a way, and it wasn't something that I just kind of sprung on them. I had a long conversation and lead up to it, so there was a good kind kind of 4 or 5 months before I actually enrolled, and I'd had discussions with various people in the agency in order to kind of make the transition relatively fluid. And it was fantastic. I worked Monday, Wednesday and Friday in the office, which was brilliant because every day I just think, I'm not in tomorrow, someone else can deal with it. So if you ever get a chance to do that, do it. And basically live the uni life for another year, which was really, really quite special. And had a bit of money so I could afford all the booze. And then I quit the Searchworks, what a bastard, after they'd been so nice to me, and went camping in Africa, actually to finish the master's degree. So I went to Africa to write my thesis. I didn't actually, again, spring quitting on them. I asked if I could take a sabbatical or do anything like that so I could go and finish writing my thesis. So I gave them 6 months to decide on whether I could go on a sabbatical or whether it was just easier for me to kind of part ways with them and then pick up when I got back, if I wanted to do it when I got back. Again, they were very, very accommodating. They seemed oddly at ease with me leaving. And yeah, had an amazing time in Africa. If you ever get to go, go. Loved it. My tent got ripped apart by wild dogs. Yeah, and I tried to walk through a river that had sharks in it. It was really quite special. Survived. Came back to London though, and thought, why would I ever want to do undersea archaeology when, you know, marketing's so much more sexy? And joined Media Contacts. As somebody's already mentioned, it's kind of who you know, not necessarily what you know. So the great thing with the Searchworks is it got bought out, and that basically meant that all the good people kind of went, I've got loads of money, I'm going to go elsewhere. So the CFO ended up at Media Contacts, and a bunch of other people ended up in various agencies around London. So very, very easy way of getting into a new role. What interested me with Media Contacts was the fact that it wasn't just a search agency. They did a whole raft of different things, which was very interesting. And the role that they got me in for was kind of a hybrid between search and display, working on things like Expedia, Hotels.com, so quite big brands, quite exciting brands. And their big focus was integration. So they had TV, they had offline activity, and they had online activity as well, and it was all very exciting. And I lasted 2 months on the basis that it wasn't really the role that they sold to me. The integration they spoke about never really happened. There was never any communication between teams. They were on completely separate floors. There was never an easy way of getting information to flow between. And it didn't really come at the right time. So Media Contacts, some good people, some really good people, they got me in for a client that had already handed in their notice with the agency. So my role in that position was essentially to get it all ready to give back to the client, which is a thankless task. Your agency doesn't love what you're doing, and the client doesn't really love what you're doing, kind of just doing the housekeeping in order to give it away. So I didn't really enjoy that role all that much, but happily, because various colleagues had gone to different agencies, I was getting courted by a few different ones, and ended up moving to a place called Harvest Digital, which you've probably never heard of. It's a tiny little agency in Soho, in London. They do a whole raft of different things. They are a pure digital agency, but they're full service. So they do web build, they do UE, they do search, social media, and analytics as well. And I joined them principally because it was integrated, and I started doing, check out the animation guys, I started doing search, then I got involved in media, so display and other forms of digital media. Then I got involved in analytics, then social, kind of by virtue of the fact that one of the girls in my team ended up working in the social team, so I couldn't really help her at all, but I got across what social was about. And also got involved in UE and web design and build, just in terms of understanding how they approach it and what they do and how they do it. So UE, if you don't know, is user experience. So how you build a site, you understand who the customer is in order to know how they'll use the site, and that's how you can kind of structure a build. So you know how to navigate through it, etc., etc. It's all very interesting, or it was for me anyway. So that's what I was doing at Harvest. Now the great thing is that because it did all sorts of digital media, I got really, really involved with something called attribution modeling, which is how you understand the interaction between all the media channels. That was kind of how I started to lead into this digital strategist role, because in order to get the best returns for clients, you don't just view a channel in isolation, you view it as a whole. Because if you can understand how it all interacts, you know where to put your money and how to squeeze the most out of it. And I also got really involved with mobile, so it was kind of new channels and also how channels interact. Those were the things that really got me excited. And then I moved to Australia after 2 years for the sunny climate. I've got a car with no roof here, and it's been raining ever since I bought it. So that's nice. So I flew over, and I worked publisher side. Now, I hope everyone really enjoys the animation on this one, because it took quite a lot of effort, and it doesn't really look like it did. So I worked publisher side very briefly for about 5 months, partly because it was a role in mobile, which I loved, and I kind of wanted to stay in it. And it was this far from where I rented a flat. Watch me move. Watch me move. Yeah, and I was still 15 minutes late every single day. Yeah, so that was really interesting, really fun. It was always slightly odd going home, sitting on my sofa at lunch, watching Diagnosis Murder. But there we go. So that was interesting. I only lasted 4 or 5 months because it wasn't ever going to be a role that was sponsored. So I was on a holiday visa, so I needed a 457 visa. And Census, Telstra don't sponsor people generally. Well, that's what they told me. So ultimately, I kind of got to the end of my tenure, and kind of towards the last few months of that, was looking for another role. And then I ended up at PhD, which I love, by the way. Fantastic company. And at PhD, I am the performance digital strategist. So there is a performance team, very specialised units. We have kind of a search team and a performance team, and we work very, very closely together. And to give you an idea of what my role actually consists of, I've put UNICEF here to pretend that I do really good work rather than Pollard Financial Services. But really what we've got, kind of the role that I do, there are various things. There's kind of an input and an output. So what we're looking at from an output side is around how we're planning around how we're going to build campaigns that are going to drive donations for UNICEF. And how we're going to use the data that we get off the activity that we run to then feed back into it. So we develop tests, we look at trend analysis, so customer shifts. So the rise of mobile has been a customer shift that's been going on for years, but very significant for these guys when they do a telethon. You get a lot of mobile activity, and they're not necessarily able to convert because they didn't have a site, etc., etc. So it's kind of spotting where these opportunities are and putting together plans in order to utilise them and grow donations through them. One of the things that we've got in PhD, it's actually built by an enormous guy who's edging towards 7 foot tall, but he's called Peter Short. Brilliant. We've got something called Pathfinder. Now, I'm not going to bore you because it's not boring at all. It's amazing. It's an attribution system that allows us to plug all the digital activity that we have into a system, and what it does is it defines how the channels interact. So I've made it small enough that you can't see their performance because they haven't okayed me showing it to you. But basically we get to see all the touch points leading up to a sale. So people may actually have seen a bunch of banners, then searched on something, then got an email, and then donated. If you just track it the normal way, you think that the email is what generated the donation, rather than all this other activity leading up to that point. So this is what this illustrates. It shows you that whole journey, and it also allows us to budget manage and say, put more money here, put less money here, in order to grow that revenue. And grow it, we did. 200% increase in donations. That's my case study. Data. Sexiest stuff in the world. The lifeblood of what the team does. Now, I did a history degree. I hadn't used Excel until I started in media. I spent pretty much every day in Excel, just kind of bringing sexy to it, really. It's the lifeblood of what we do. The data, if you get excited about data, it's kind of the perfect role. It's if you like trends and you like analysis, it's the perfect kind of position to be in, because you get lots and lots of data. B, sometimes it's entirely useless, and often it's tracked completely wrong. But when you do get some nuggets out of it, you can actually make it into a valuable change for the client. So if you spot a trend and you actually employ that in a way, you can actually see quite significant increases in revenue or increases in donations, which is fantastic for us, it's fantastic for the clients. So it's a very meaningful way of working. You get to see the benefit of what you're doing for the client. It's not necessarily kind of, ooh, we think we got this reach and we think we got, it's none of that. It's very, very defined in terms of what you're driving for them. And when we're talking about things like charities, it is really quite nice. It's less interesting when we're talking about things like life insurance, but it is still valuable to know those trends because they generally work across quite a few different sectors as well. And data gives us improvement, not just improve. It gives us the opportunity to improve the activity that we're running. So it's very optimization focused, it's very development focused. It lets us improve stuff, and it also lets us spot new opportunities to kind of drive into it as well. My day-to-day. So I don't know if everyone can see this, but point to the one who can spot the very awkward positioning of both finger and access. And also free time apparently is quite visible there. I don't have masses of that, although I'm sure everyone from PhD would beg to differ. My day-to-day is very, very varied, and that's kind of one of the things that I really love about the role. So part of my role is defining what the offering is, what the agency offering is to our clients. Part of it is around, it sounds really relatively boring to say, but I do run a lot of reports. Quite often they aren't ever reports I would ever share with clients, but it's a way of understanding what's happening, and it's a way of actually drilling into the trends and the analysis and actually getting to the point of understanding how stuff is working. And what I kind of get now as well is the ability to understand how TV is driving to online. You can't track that necessarily very easily, but you can see uplift, and then you can start to assign values to things that you haven't ever been able to assign a value to. So ultimately, it's my day-to-day is playtime. It varies. There's all sorts of things that I do. Oh, I go to lots and lots of meetings. I go to meetings about meetings as well, which is incredibly frustrating. Would I change anything in terms of what I've done previously, kind of what's led me to this point? In truth, absolutely not. I have been extremely lucky throughout my kind of rather meandering career. And I've been extremely lucky because the people and the agencies that I've worked for have been extremely good to me, extremely accommodating. And I think that that's partly because as an employee, I gave a lot to these places. So the search works, I was doing the long hours that everyone spoke about. So I used to get in for about 7:30 in the morning, work till about 6:30, go home, work till about midnight. And I do that for about 12 months. So I invested a lot into it, but I got a lot of value off the back of that as well. They were extremely good to me, and they developed me very, very quickly as well. And the same with Harvest, fantastic company to work for, but ultimately everyone had to work very, very hard, especially when the recession hit. So we lost a lot of people through them being made redundant, which wasn't very easy when you had a team that was, the agency was only 40 people. So when you lose nearly 10 people, you lost a quarter of your agency, but you haven't lost any clients. So the volume of work that everyone else has to pick up is significant. So it has been very hard. It's been a lot of long hours. It's why I look a lot older than I am, and it's why I have a lot less hair than I used to have. But I wouldn't change it. Wouldn't change anything at all. Okay, knowledge. What do I know now that would have been useful previously? The one thing that I've been lucky enough to do, so my career path has followed a system of being very, very specialised, slightly wider, slightly wider, slightly wider. So I've been able to get very, very in-depth and very granular on certain subjects and then actually broaden that knowledge out, which is why I'm able to sit in, although it's a specialist role, it's a generalist role as well. So I have to understand all digital media. And I've been able to do that by virtue of the fact that I've had a position where I've been able to slowly get more involved in more and more things. So I've loved that. So if you ever get a chance to kind of expand your abilities and expand your knowledge by looking at other platforms and other channels, go for it. It's extremely interesting. And the thing that still baffles me is when I was at the Search Works, everyone used to say TV doesn't work, principally because it meant we get more budget into search. every channel works in some way. It's just the level that it works and the way that it works. So understanding that just makes for a very interesting thing anyway, but it also just rounds off your kind of your career knowledge, and it's really, really valuable to have. The one thing that I know now that I didn't necessarily know when I started is that I love small agencies. I don't like large agencies. And I like small agencies because of the opportunity that they give you. Because there are so few people, you generally get... Oh, thank you. You generally get the ability to get more involved in more things. It's up to you to be able to kind of to get your fingers in lots and lots of different pies. Whereas if you're in a large agency, there's quite a risk of getting pigeonholed. That's not to say large agency isn't good. It's just that's how I've experienced agency life. Yeah, I think that's that for that. Where to next? As you can probably tell, I have absolutely no clue where my career is going, or really where it's been. It's kind of been all over the place. What I do know is that the role that I'm in, I absolutely love. It's extremely varied. I'm in a fantastic team in a great agency. So it sounds really odd to say that I'm very, very comfortable. Not comfortable. I enjoy what I do at the moment. I have absolutely no idea what I will be doing in the future. Will I ever stay agency side? I don't know. Will I ever stay in marketing? I really haven't got a clue. I used to want to be a vet. So I have, it sounds weird to talk in a kind of a careers focused environment about the fact that I haven't got a clue where mine's going. Best of luck to you all. That's me.
Last round of questions. Anyone? It was just a perfect talk. Well, thank you again. Round of applause for Richard. Thank you. I hope you can see from today's session that it is the first session that we have run on industry careers, and there's a couple of themes that I hope you guys picked up. Nick put it quite nicely on